but good morning, good afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you are. Thank you really for joining us today. I know your time is very valuable, and so we do appreciate you spending it with us. I'm Monique Sherman, Head of Marketing at Automation Hero. We are lucky. We are joined today by our partner HEXstream today to talk about the impact of automation for utilities. We've got some really interesting tidbits. I'm, maybe a little bit biased, and I hope that we're able to kind of, share what we've learned and what the gentlemen here have learned with you guys. Just as a little bit of background, HEXstream is a solution-driven company focused on helping utilities and other selected industries extract value from their data. They build enterprise analytics platforms that weave together data from multiple sources, including departmental silos, to fit each customer's specific requirements. They then help their customers transform streams of operational data into actionable real-time business intelligence. So they are the experts here. We're very excited. Just first, some introductions are in order. We have Bill Silkett, who is the senior director, at HEXstream. He has over 30 years of experience in the utility industry, spanning CIS project implementation and management, as well as consulting. We also have Terry Marsh. He serves as HEXstream's Advanced Analytics and Artificial Intelligence lead for utilities. It's a mouthful, but it's got a lot behind it. He brings over 3 decades of valuable utility industry expertise to this role, in which he drives successful client outcomes and works to further cement HEXstream's position as a leader in the utility analytics space. And then last but not least, we have Andre Wlasowitz. Knew I was going to stumble. Sorry, Andre, who is our sales director with Automation Hero. And he previously held roles with HEXstream and Oracle, where he helped companies solve complex problems with technology and reshape their processes for innovation and growth. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. So exciting for today. Before we jump in, just a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make sure we use the most use of your time. So please don't hesitate to send in any questions via the chat or Q&A option. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. And we do have a Q&A section at the end of this session. We will try to get to everyone's questions, but if we run out of time beforehand, we do have contact information where you can reach out to these gentlemen individually. And we can also follow up with you as well if you want to share your contact information. And this is just a brief snapshot of what we're going to cover today, just so you have a little bit of an outline. But with that, I'm going to pass it to Andre for an overview of automation. Andre, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Monique. Kind of really excited to have this conversation and this chance to talk about automation with HEXstream as well. So, from a kind of foundational standpoint, if we talk about automation, you can't open a magazine without some quote from Forrester or Gartner or one of the major consultancies, kind of offering their view of it. Monique, can we advance there? And so, for example, Forrester came out and said that, digital automation it's not an interesting thing anymore. It's going to be something that's imperative. And the reality is that COVID-19 is changing how companies' automation agendas are accelerating. And so they're really moving rapidly towards back office processes, business resilience, really being able to deal with the environment. And so these automations, they represent an infusion of your more traditional kind of basic robotic process automation, or RPA, with pragmatic AI and low-code tools. And so this kind of combination is going to help businesses become more efficient and resilient while they're expanding their actual operations. Because, the reality is, next slide, that utilities are a business. And so what is the problem, right? The problem is that utilities are a business. And just like many other businesses, they face the challenges of ballooning processes, whether it's due to regulatory challenges, new system requirements, so on and so forth. And that eventually starts to just deplete people's motivation, kind of their creativity at work more and more. And they just focus on getting the job done, coming in, getting the job done, going on to the next day. Meanwhile, you have this competing initiative of making these processes leaner. And so how do you balance these? And so from a, kind of being able to balance those, let's be honest, the processes are time consuming, They're boring, they're not really the most valuable use of time and resources, and they involve a lot of screen time. And so the more time you're spending with that, the less time you have for creative thought, which is that the time you have available for critical thought goes down. And that ends up driving the amount of effort that you can put towards employee engagement, product innovation, that goes down as well. And so what is basic automation? We mentioned it a couple of times. It's robotic process automation is kind of the name that's given to that, summarizes RPA. And this is really the entry point of most automation initiatives. And it focuses on kind of automating what are those routine, those simple, kind of mundane tasks. So stuff like reordering office equipment, logging a customer service call, those day-to-day tasks that you have to do. How does RPA work, right? It's designed to really eliminate errors in those activities and not be invasive, not replace existing systems, but kind of sit on top of that. And what it does is it mimics what people do in those existing systems. So whether it's moving a cursor around, whether it's kind of making a selection for a drop-down from a drop-down menu, it's designed to mimic those activities, but do them error-free. So for example, if I'm ordering supplies and I need to charge it to a cost center, I charge it to the accurate cost center, not just the first item on the drop-down list, because that's the easiest one to pick. And so, while this is a start and it does solve some of those kind of mundane activities, the reality is that our RPA is limited. It's focused on what are those simple processes, what are those highly structured data forms, the same kind of form that goes through all the time. It's got the same format every time. There's no variation there, which is great. But what about those complex processes? What about the ones where I need AI because I have documents that are highly variable? I have an unknown document structure. This is where intelligent process automation comes in. So great. What is intelligent process automation? So intelligent process automation starts where RPA does, with integrations, being minimally invasive, with defining workflows. And then once you start to get into documents, this is where the difference comes into play. So whereas traditional RPA needs highly structured documents, intelligent automation can handle any type of documents. Are they scanned? Are they typed? Even documents that have handwriting with them. Is it a picture of a document, right? So you've got the ability to be a lot more flexible and inclusive with those. And then it goes on into integrating AI and OCR capabilities. And it may seem a little counterintuitive to think of humans in the loop, but as you have those AI and OCR capabilities and you have these workflows, there is high value work that people can still do. And so you want them included. And, as Bill and Terry will talk about, there are elements of those processes, of those decisions that we want people to still do. So we want them focused on what's valuable rather than the boring, mundane stuff, right? We want their time to be valuably spent. And then the last piece of this ties off with insights, being able to make sure that the KPIs, the actual benefits that you're getting from the process, from the automation, meet what your expectations are. And so you can kind of ensure that those KPIs are met and that the actual behaviors that you're trying to instill are being followed within an organization. So that's, from a foundational standpoint, kind of the simple landscape from RPA, and then kind of the expansion into intelligent automation. But what does that mean for utilities? And so with this, I'll hand it over to Bill to talk about, kind of those more specific examples.
Hey, thanks, Andre. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Glad to see so many folks are able to turn out today. I want to first start by talking about utilities and data just in a bit of a general sense, and then I'll tie that to process automation, and then finally share some examples of automation projects that we're doing now that'll help bring to life some of the things that Andre just said. So just no news to anybody on this webinar. Utilities are complex organizations. Whether you're talking about a large electric utility involved with generation, transmission, distribution, a municipal, handling multiple services, water, wastewater, refuse, cable, dog licenses, or a single commodity water utility. Each one has an operational focus in multiple areas. So there's field operations, there's meter operations, customer service, billing, payments, revenue protection, the list goes on. But each of those operational groups clearly has some dependence and relationship with the other groups. But life being what it is, silos develop. And a lot of the data that's generated or collected inside of these departmental silos all too often lives and dies there. Now, sure, each organization, each silo will share data that's needed by the outside world. But it's not always easy to get, either from a political or a technology standpoint. So there can be different systems, different processes, integration issues. It's my data, what do you want it for? So there's some opportunities there. And those, the data silo can lead to problems. So multiple departments could be collecting some of the very same data, each for their own use. Now, the first problem there is, could be obvious duplication of effort. But it also leads to potentially a bigger problem that what is perceived as the same data may not match. So everyone comes in assuming that the data is all the same, but it's not always the case. Different departments have different rules, different systems, different extraction methods. All can potentially lead to different results. So then you're in a situation of, depending upon who you ask, you can get a different answer. So fortunately, there's a growing realization of data as a corporate asset, that no one group or silo owns the data, and that really a single source of truth needs to be developed and maintained for all the data across the organization. So we see those data silos starting to crumble and dissolve over time. So that's the data silo issue. Now let's talk about the complexity and volume. And the reality, as we all know, that the complexity and volume data is growing by leaps and bounds. Take customer data. The utility business is far more competitive now. Customer expectations are much higher than ever before. People expect their utility to be like Amazon and know everything about them, know what they're thinking before they know themselves. And we're no longer just collecting or tracking name and address and customer type, as was the case back when customers were just ratepayers. Now customers expect their utility to know a lot about them, and the utility wants to know about them. So the utility is collecting a lot more data, all sorts of demographic info, preferred communication channel. Do they want to be communicated with by text or email or phone call? Rate plans we might have talked to them about, the potential money saving opportunities. Do they want to get the newsletter? Do they want marketing material? Do they follow us on social media? What are they saying about us? Then there's field service. There's data about crews, activities, who did what, when, how long did it take? Did they get there on time? Did they leave before the job was done? What route did they take? How was the traffic? Is that the best route to go during that particular time of day or year? And then there's meter data. More and more utilities are deploying smart meters. One estimate is that there's going to be 1.5 billion smart meters deployed by 2025. That's a lot of data being pumped back into the mothership every 15 minutes or whatever the cadence is. And then there's asset data. So inspections, the results of those inspections, drone flyovers, photographs that the drones take, a ton of IoT sensors. So the result is we have more and more data coming into our data silos, and the volume and the complexity of that data are only increasing. So now the question is, what's all that have to do with process automation? Well, a few things. First, to automate any process, you have to stop and examine it. So simply by taking the time to step back and take a close and critical look at how things are being done and ask how they should be done can lead to a big payday. It'll help drive some of the inertia, we've always done it that way, out and bring some system thinking in. So that has value. Add to that the growing realization that data is a corporate asset, needs to be managed carefully. And then you'll start seeing processes become re-engineered in ways that'll really begin to break down those silos and let everyone share in that bounty of corporate data with appropriate controls, of course, which are another subject entirely, but clearly important. And finally, we come to the process automation opportunities. So a powerful and relatively easy to use platform like Automation Hero provides the opportunity for getting real and fairly immediate payback from doing the work of examining your processes and looking for improvements. So after automation, once automated, the tasks are going to be able to be done a lot more quickly and efficiently and more cheaply. So as Andre pointed out, with automation, there are no data entry issues. Once the computer's trained, it does things perfectly. It doesn't pick the first one on the pick list, it goes to the right one. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't ask for a day off or have a bad day. It just grinds through and processes the data quickly, efficiently. So there's some real incentive to start examining processes and looking for automation opportunities, even just starting with the lower level, the simple, more robotic, easy ones, and looking for ways to drive efficiency and to free human resources so they're available for more productive activities. Processes always start because they solve problems. They perpetuate because they work. But then simple inertia kicks in and they just go on and on, whether or not they're working today as well as they worked yesterday and the days before that. So when you start looking at and for automation opportunities with the understanding of data as an asset that should be shared, you'll start to see some things happen. You'll start to fix things. People will start looking across those silos, find the right place to collect the specific set of data once. Look at who needs the data and provide the same set of data to everyone who needs it according to a designed and well thought out set of rules in an organized manner, and one that's designed to process and integrate the data for the benefit of the entire organization. So the point I'm trying to make is when you start automating processes, you'll find that you will be able to get things done faster, to save money. You'll free humans from boring, repetitive tasks to engage in activities that are more meaningful and valuable. And you'll really start to break down those data silos and treat data as a true and valuable corporate asset. So you got to ask, what's not to like? Let's look at, let's take a pause here and then look at some examples of the process automation projects that we're working with utilities on right now. And on this continuum that Andre talked about of the robotic to the intelligent, I'm going to start closer to the robotic side, although you'll quickly see how the intelligence factor creeps in when simple robotics doesn't turn out to be enough. So let's look at invoice processing. And I'm sure this isn't new to anyone on this call that there are invoices that come in and need to be processed. The current process, typical across many organizations, they come in via email, paper mail, dropped off, however they get in. They're typically digitized for long-term storage purposes. And then specific data elements in those invoices are manually keyed into some typically AP system for payment processing and long-term resolution. Boring work, keying those things day in and day out. Relatively costly, very little human value add to that process. Really something that you say that can and should be replaced by a machine. So you look at how we automated that process, and the evolution of this is interesting, tied back to what Andre talked about. So we went in and we teach the system to read the various types of invoices, what they look, how to understand where the data fields are, where to post the information in the appropriate field in the fields in the AP system. So we go through that process. Then we send those proposed postings off for human validation, something that a human needs to do, especially in the early stages, as we're getting used to the system and it's getting used to us. So the human validates and approves what the system has done and checks those off and lets them go on through. If issues are found, the issues are corrected, the system is updated so it can learn, and then the processing continues. And so then the system prepares the appropriate reports and metrics and posts the data, and invoices get paid, and life is good. But to no real surprise to anyone that's been working with systems, it didn't turn out to be quite that simple. In fact, there's more than one type of invoice. And oh yeah, certain types of invoices need to be processed in different ways, and they go off to a different system. So all of a sudden now, instead of just move this field into that field and push it along, we're having to ask the system to make some decisions, to look at that invoice and understand how that invoice is supposed to be processed and do it in the correct manner. So it's a good thing we're working with an intelligent system. And we can teach the system how to figure out what type of invoice it's looking at and how to process it accordingly. And with Automation Hero and the intelligent process automation, we can add those capabilities and build on what we already have and teach the system to properly then categorize, process, and report those invoices. So we've gone from a relatively simple robotic boom, 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 boom process into a more intelligent process where we're asking the system to evaluate and make decisions and to evolve. And the interesting thing about this, once people see and begin to understand the capabilities that the platform has, the lights start to come on and other opportunities surface. So another example that I'll bring up is field notes. Field notes and comments are ubiquitous in utilities. Field reps are taking notes. Customer service reps are taking comments based on their calls. These notes are free form, unstructured, and often contain some pretty valuable information. And even scanning or using an iPad to capture the notes only really takes them from a pencil and a paper or in already machine and puts them into machine readable form, but it doesn't capture the intelligence or the essence of what's being written, what's being communicated, the importance of the message. And so Automation Hero has the ability to do natural language processing. So we can feed those field notes and those comments through Automation Hero. And this completely unstructured data, and Automation Hero can make sense of the written notes to pull out the essence and to do something with it. So it's almost like a helpful assistant, that a human assistant that reads the notes, goes off and grabs some related information that looks like it might be relevant to what is being communicated, that the boss might want when he's evaluating the next step, and then pass it on to the boss with a suggestion or a summary of what's being communicated. But the interesting thing is that the intelligent process automation can do that work for you. So it can take the place of that eager assistant and make some evaluation on those field notes. The specific system we're working on right now initially involves reading and interpreting field inspection notes and then plugging them into a source system of record and doing some processing from there. But as we get that in place, and just like with the invoice example, the complexity and the usefulness and the application will grow. One more example that we're looking at is with compliance reporting. And we see this as quite a fruitful area for utilities. Utilities have to fill out a ton of compliance reports to FERC and many other agencies. So process automation can learn how to sift through the numbers, the requirements, make decisions about where to go for associated information needed to complete a form, and then complete the form and do it all without human intervention, and just pass those along for human evaluation and approval. And so for anybody that's worked on some of these reports, having a machine do a lot of that initial digging and chugging and gathering of data is the potential savings, and just the freedom from the laborious task is pretty obvious. And the payoff stuff is important, but it has relatively low payoff for utility other than the fact that it's required. So handing that off to a machine while you do some more important and human-oriented work, more appropriate human work, is pretty obvious. So those are some of the examples that I have. And keep in mind, there's a lot of other ones that Automation Hero has been doing this for many utilities. And as Andre pointed out, utilities are businesses just like any other. So there's a lot of automation opportunities. Now I'll pass it off to Terry and let him talk about the other side of that continuum.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks, Bill. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to take some use cases around smart meters and transmission distribution infrastructure. The reason why we pick these cases are that they're new, so there's not really any formality around them, and there's going to be lots of data. So let's think about the smart meter from both sides, the utility side, I'll cover that a little bit, and from the customer side, I'll cover that a little bit as well. Smart meters are foundational to the smart grid. They're a gateway between the utility and the customer. And smart meters are the key device in the advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI network. Using smart meters, utilities monitor energy usage, voltage, current, power factor, consumption and usage patterns. They can be used to connect and disconnect service to the customer remotely. And they can detect fraud, tampering, and theft in the system. On the customer side of the meter, specifically devices and systems, and think of these working similar to OnStar, which is a remote vehicle monitoring service that most of you are probably familiar with. You start with a management system that helps with the interaction of the devices and the systems, such as a home energy management system connected to a home area network. What's connected there? What are the devices? Smart thermostat, PV and other generation, like a backup generator or a microturbine, battery energy storage, electric vehicles, smart appliances. These are smart grid ready appliances, water heaters, pool heaters, dishwashers, the furnace, or your air conditioner. And these give off data today that allow us to even look at the kilowatts they use and convert that into the dollars that they're costing you as you consume the power. So lots of data, lots of volume, stuff going to databases, data management software, data processing systems, and data applications or systems applications. So lots of data. How might IPA create value from all the data and these opportunities? So as we look at intelligent automation, here's some of the advantages that we should be able to capture. Opportunities for time of use pricing, net metering, compensation programs associated with demand response. So these are positive impacts to the customer that can save them money and lower their utility bills. So imagine this, the automation of turning up or turning down your thermostat based on the availability of power, the cost of power, the lowest cost power that is available for that part of the day, power expenditure controls. An example that I'm giving here is let's say you set a threshold that you want your electric bill to be $250 for that month. An IPA system can help you determine your usage and proportion out your spend for the whole month. All that can be done through an automated intelligent automation system. Prioritize distribution of excess energy and energy storage. Power up your EV, electric vehicle, or sell it back to the utility. All this stuff can be managed in an intelligent system. Appliances like water heaters, only heating water based upon certain set parameters, such as the cost of power, or when power is the cheapest, utility incentives or schedules. And managing green energy. This is very important to a lot of people. So managing green energy programs like Energy Tag to validate the source of green power, so that can be validated. Intelligent process automation will be used in every one of these scenarios, and they're going to be a reality. I'm excited to get a chance, hopefully, to be able to do some of these for some of the utilities. The next one is transmission and distribution monitoring, analysis, and services. Physical assets in the T&D network are vast. These are vast networks that most utilities have. They're affected by weather, wind, hail, rain, snow, tornadoes, vandalism, wildlife and wildfires, vegetation. Data volumes are increasing due to technology. So increasing aerial inspections using UAVs and drones, high fidelity video, infrared thermography, sound and acoustics, and increasing frequency of inspections. So maybe it was done quarterly, it may be done now based upon events, timing, or storms and weather, and inline sensors. All these things collecting lots of data that has not existed in the past. Intelligent process automation, AI, and advanced analytic solutions will combine to turn a data lake created by all this data into a valuable data warehouse supporting intelligent process automation. Expected benefits of IPA to a transmission distribution infrastructure. An IPA automates the predictive maintenance function, finding problems before they negatively affect the system. It allows for non-emergency scheduling based upon automated analysis, repairs, replacements on the network, adjustments to the network, vegetation removal, with no initial human interaction. Based upon this information, it could evaluate the stores and warehouses of inventory to assign parts or components to a job, could instigate inventory ordering, could notify a contractor that work needs to be performed and allow that contractor to communicate back when the work itself is finished. To me, these are two great cases and exciting. So these are exciting times, and look forward to being able to work on these cases in the future. I've covered these two advanced cases, and what I'd like to do is, if anybody's got any other cases they'd like to mention or have us discuss, any questions that you want to ask, please do that in the automated system. If it's something that doesn't get answered today, we hope that you will get back to us. We're sharing with you our contact information, or if you will share with us your contact information, we'll get back to you. So thanks. Andre is going to close our session with some final thoughts, and here's Andre.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill and Terry. One of the challenges with automation is that it's a very broad topic, right? And kind of it's all encompassing. And so I really appreciate the kind of specific examples, because it makes it easier to understand the capabilities and kind of think forward of how can I use this tool? How will it actually be available? So having those real examples is awesome. And as you look at kind of this chart, you see the kind of migration from what can traditional tools do, right? And that's really just the the mundane, repetitive, move data from one field to another. But in order to be able to get towards those intelligent, kind of towards those higher value add activities, and Bill's example was great with the invoice processing. And you start out and you think it's going to be a simple task, right? I have invoices come in, I need to scan them, and I need to put the data into a system. And then you start looking at what the reality is. And then the reality is that, hey, people themselves have been injecting their intelligence into the system and into that process. And so as you kind of peel away the proverbial layers, you start to see that. And that's where an advanced platform, an intelligent process automation platform like Automation Hero really shines, because you're not trying to stitch different tools or different technologies together, and then you've exchanged one problem for another one. So the reality is, to tie back to what Bill said, at the end of the day, utilities are businesses. And so we've talked about some specific examples, very utility based, but more traditional examples within HR, like recruiting, managing contractors, day-to-day AR and AP activity, day-to-day procurement activity, from requisitions to issuing purchase orders, kind of the list goes on and on. It's good to have the specific examples, but there's just a lot that is common across the industry, across multiple industries, that intelligent process automation can solve. So we're looking forward to answering some of the questions that are there. Monique, I'll let you take it over from here, but looking forward to take the next conversation.
Yeah, gentlemen, you guys, thank you so much for that. Hopefully we were able to they were able to enlighten you a little bit more about what they've been seeing with how automation has been helping the utilities industry. We have had some questions trickle in. So I'm going to kick off with, thank you, Jim Sherry. Have any studies been done to demonstrate actual cost savings as a result of specific uses of automation? And I'll maybe kind of, I think it'll be interesting if you guys have read any studies, but I know we definitely have use cases where we've worked with utilities and have seen cost savings. So maybe we can share that into the mix as studies, but I'll open that up to all three of you guys. You can fight who wants to answer first. And maybe Terry, since you're the first one that I see on the screen, I'll ask you if you've got anything that you want to input to this.
Well, utilities with the changes in the marketplace and a lot of pressures they're under, are looking for ways to more precision spending. And with that, they need to have more precision in their data. And I see automation of data being primary to that. So hopefully that gives a little insight into that.
And Bill,
Yeah.
Andre, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I guess I'll add to that a lot of that is dependent on the use case. And there's for any of the use cases with us and with HEXstream, one of the things we do is we look at what is that return, right? What is that ROI, and what are the components? And so if I'm looking at a use case that's more focused on asset, I'm going to have maintenance components, I'm going to have labor savings, I'm going to have stock and inventory that I need to manage. And so there is a lot of information that's available in terms of kind of what are the components to be able to show what the cost savings, kind of what the return is. But it is very much use case dependent. And to tie into what Bill said, there's a lot that's learned just by identifying a process and saying, this is the process that we want to analyze. And so what we would do is, in terms of starting a conversation, we know what those other projects are. We know where the high ROI use cases are to begin. And so that's really where we look at to kind of get that quickest return. Bill, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
I can add just on that invoice processing. I believe we're going to replace 3 full-time people that are doing that. It's a pretty large utility with something that's going to cost less than 1 person per year, considerably less than 1 person per year. So that's the kind of results we can see, and improve accuracy.
And I'll just chime in that if anybody has questions about what, maybe the use cases that they're thinking of and what the ROI can be, we will be sharing, as we mentioned earlier, these gentlemen's email addresses. So feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to have a conversation with you to see what that looks like for your organization. Another question that came through is, can a single platform cover all aspects of RPA and intelligent automation, or do we need multiple tools to accomplish all of this?
So
One tool. Sorry, Andre. let me butt in, and you can,
Yeah, go ahead.
as I talked about with the invoice example, it's one tool. That's the beauty of it, is that we started robotic and ended up intelligent. So we got smart robots.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. That it is the the advantage, or kind of one of the benefits of an intelligent process automation platform like what Automation Hero has put together is it is a single platform that can do the, kind of more simple mundane work, but then give you the ability to grow into the self-service, the AI, where you can start to put that intelligence in. And then again, from a utility standpoint, you're in the business of utilities, right? Um, in terms of being able to manage in all those different systems. And I have multiple technologies. They do one and two things today, and then tomorrow I need three and four, and the week after I need five and six. You start to get into this, how do I manage them? And so you've, again, exchanged one pain for another. The beauty of the Automation Hero platform is it is kind of all encompassing, in that to be a true kind of end-to-end solution. Foundationally give you what you need to get started, but give you the capabilities to grow as you want to make your processes more and more intelligent in the future.
Um, Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions that kind of came in since they're a little bit along the same lines. The question is generally, how long does it take to automate a typical task? Are we looking for months or weeks? And then to kind of tag on to that, a specific question was around, and for Bill, this would be for you, how long it took to implement that invoice processing project. So maybe using that as an example.
Sure. That's, again, use case based. It's sort of like, how long is a piece of string? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. The invoice one is, the initial piece was 8 to 10 weeks. The other piece has not been fully, so there's some requirements that still need to be gathered to understand how complex the other part of that, the more complex part of it is. But I wouldn't expect it to be all that much longer. So, Andre, what do you think?
I love the string analogy, Bill. I'm going to have to steal that from you. The reality is that a process kind of getting started. So if I'm looking, and I'll use the invoice as an example, if I want to get a process started, or I'm doing classification, I've got documents, or customer service requests, emails coming in. It is very easy. You can set up a use case within probably less than a week or so, in terms of making the connection to the email server. A lot of that is available out of the box, and just start to classify. Is this a billing question? Is this an account question? Is this a change of address question? That's the first piece of it. That's easy to set up. But as you talk about these processes, and the invoice one is a great example, is you go through, and most of these processes are multi-phased. So if I'm looking at a customer service process, there may be 7, 8 steps within that process. But the way that we recommend doing these projects is kind of a phased approach, your proverbial crawl, walk, run. So going back, we would look and say, hey, first we're going to do a classification, right? We're going to get that up and running. Again, the beauty of an integrated platform is you can see how the model's working. It's not a black box where I send it out and come back. I can see how the middle's working. I can make sure the performance is what I want. And then I can put in the next step and say, if it's an account question, go to your CRM system, pull the information, or update the account, or send back an email. That may take, another couple of weeks. And so as I look at this, and I'm looking at a project that's 8 to 10 weeks to get done, but I'm incrementally getting value and solving tasks as I'm going through those elements.
I'm going to I think that's actually a good maybe segue into this next question that came in. It's, how do you decide whether you need something that's more simple RPA versus something that's more intelligent automation for your use case? Because you were talking about, like, you're starting out a little bit like the easier low hanging fruit, and then you develop. But how do you know what is what? I'll open that up to the group as well.
To me, that's part of the requirements analysis and the decision on how you start and then build. I mean, typically want to start simple and then build toward the more complex, but again, it depends on the problem you're trying to solve.
So maybe like a bit of a consulting approach from somebody on your end, where you can help walk or guide somebody through that conversation about.
Correct.
they're like, these are our problems. Do you think this is more simple automation, or do we need something a little bit, that can handle the intelligent aspect of it?
Yeah, and I again would say that that's the benefit of this tool, that it can handle the full spectrum. So you can start simple and get complex, or you don't have to be afraid about getting into getting into a discussion about the requirements and scratch your head. If we could just do this, well, you can just do that. So you may want to start big. It depends on a lot of things like any other IT project. Budget, desired results, time frame, what you need. But the
Yeah.
tool is the capability of the tool is what's important. So I'd say that's a sort of an individual decision based on the project and a lot of other factors.
And if I can add one point to that, part of when we looked at the circle of what are the elements of intelligent automation, the last piece of that was the insights. And so one of the elements of the platform is the ability to just map a process. So what are the steps as I go through? And I bring that up because, Monique, to your question, Bill brought up in his section you got to map, just talking about a process gives you a lot of information. Well, one of the things that we see is there's steps in that process where if I use the insights piece kind of first and I see what the process looks like. And one of the things that I discover then is that there is actually a lot of human intelligence in the process, but that's not documented anywhere because it's not in the system. That's not one of the buttons I click. That's not one of the menus. And so you don't know that, Bill, when he's processing purchase orders, after he fills everything in, he actually looks and says, well, I need to send this to supplier A versus supplier B because I know that supplier A specializes in this kind of equipment and supplier B specializes in that kind of equipment. That's not documented anywhere, maybe, right? That may be part of that institutional knowledge. So a lot of processes actually do have intelligence requirements or intelligence steps, but you have to go through the exercise of, starting with the simple automation, doing the discovery to actually see which of these decisions are simple decisions, right? Part of that mundane work versus ones that people are making, but it's not, again, it's not documented anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andre. That goes to that famous phrase, the aging workforce that utilities are faced with. And there's a lot of knowledge leaking out, just like you're talking about, undocumented stuff that Joe knows. Joe's the guy who knows that. We'll go ask Joe all of a sudden. So it's an opportunity to capture some of that stuff and utilize it ongoing. Some of that
Thank you.
institutional knowledge.
Yeah, there's so sorry. Thanks everybody who's hanging on the line still. I do appreciate you guys staying with our Q&A section. We normally kind of wrap up actually at the quarter to the hour, so we are a few minutes over, but I do have a couple of more questions that I think would be interesting to get to because it is around infrastructure, and I think people are considering bringing in this type of technology. What do they have to think about? So I'll just go through these two, and then we'll see if we can wrap it up. How does automation work with a hybrid data infrastructure? Can it simultaneously pull from my cloud and on-premise sources? Not sure who the best person is to answer this. So who wants to take a shot at it?
I vote for Andre.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, so the answer is yes. Now I will say that there are a lot of security concerns. I want to make sure that I'm not, opening up my on-premise environment if I'm doing a hybrid environment, or I need to make sure that I have the ability to pull the data from the cloud. But when we talk about an intelligent automation platform like this, we use it across multiple industries with many requirements. The customer base is global, so we have compliance with GDPR, basically making sure that personal data is encrypted both in transit and at rest. So from an architecture standpoint, these tools are designed to be minimally invasive. These tools are designed to augment what people are doing and augment those processes, not necessarily rip and replace your existing kind of ERP or kind of network management systems that you have. These would kind of sit next to them, sit alongside, and really leverage a lot of those securities. So it can be installed on premise. If you want everything behind your firewall, great. That can be done. If you want it all on the cloud because you're moving everything in cloud, great. it can be done that if you've got a hybrid environment. But I will, Bill, thanks for throwing it to me. I'm going to throw it right back to you, because one of the things that Bill talked about is making sure that you're making the most efficient use of data. So what I would not recommend or advocate is using the system to move data from on-premise to the cloud. Kind of now I've got copies of data, I've got multiple. So I would say that the answer is it can match the environment that you have, but I would sit back and take a true kind of data architecture view as well to say, how should it be implemented, right? Where should I be pulling the data from? How should I implement those automations?
Right. Implied but not stated is the platform resides in the cloud or on premise. So it's where it makes the most sense either way. So you're right.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So this is actually about data silos, because there was quite a bit of talk about how that is, a big challenge earlier in the presentation. And so understanding that process automation can help break some of these silos down, what are other ways to help accomplish that? And Bill, I think this one would be for you.
Okay, well, we had a webinar not too long ago advocating, discussing, I guess, some was advocating, others were questioning the idea of a chief data officer. So that certainly is something that that we're seeing more and more in organizations and in utilities, where they appoint a chief data officer, somebody whose responsibility it is to make sure that the data that the utility is collecting is treated, looked at as an asset and treated appropriately. And so that, by its very nature, is going to break down some of the silos. We build systems and design data warehouses specifically to help organizations break down data silos, to pull data and get into these discussions across the different departments about what do you need from this department and that department, and build a data warehouse that's designed to be the single source of truth for everybody. And so it can be a top-down or a bottom-up approach. Those are a couple. The key thing is, just like a lot of things in life, you recognize you got a problem and then you can start fixing it. People, I think, are recognizing that the issue is there, the opportunity that the data presents is real and substantial and necessary for moving forward. And so it's just tackling it in different ways that fit the organization's personality.
Thank you. And I was going to say, if you have access to that webinar, maybe you can pop it into the chat really quick, just so people can access it. And sorry, just one more question came in, just because I have you guys here, and then we'll wrap up. But I think this is a good one for people who, again, are maybe just getting started and aren't really sure what they need. So it looks like it's probably coming from maybe a smaller company or somebody, or somebody who's just getting started with automation. How can we leverage intelligent automation if we don't have historical data to train an AI model with? Andre, do you want to take this? And also, if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, no, I can take that. So from a platform standpoint, this is actually a very specific thought that we had as a company. Was it can be a little overwhelming to look at this big AI platform that's going to come in, it's going to make all these decisions. But one of the realities with AI models is that a lot of them are only as good as the data that you feed them. And so if you feed bad data, you're going to get a bad model. And so the hang up that a lot of people have is, well, I'm going to wait until I get good data, and that's kind of like waiting for, the proverbial, I'm going to wait until all the planes leave on time before I go to the airport. Well, that's never going to happen, right? So it's always kind of the search. So what we've done from a platform standpoint is actually put in a lot of self-service capabilities that leverage existing models out of the box. And so what you can do is you can actually get started with a natural language processing model like the one that Bill mentioned, to have information come in, have emails come in, do classification by asking questions, what kind of email is this? So even without historical data, I can do basic classification and now start to collect not only the data, but also the results of the model. And so as now the process moves forward, I will be able to learn off of the data that I'm collecting, whether it's, good, bad, or ugly, and tune the model that I have to my system. So not having historical data, not having systems that have kept historical data is not an issue to get started. we can leverage some of the out-of-the-box capabilities to give you that starting point. And again, with the human in the loop, it's not like this is off running on its own and you're wondering what decisions it's making. So you can leverage the human in the loop to do the data review and make sure that everything's going well. And then over time, wean yourself off of that kind of verification or validation step and let the models take over more and more.
Fantastic. You guys, we did it. Thank you for hanging with us through this Q&A. It really helped that everybody was able to get their questions answered and learned a little bit from Terry, Bill, and Andre here. I'm going to go ahead and share everybody's contact information. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on this webinar today. Here are their email addresses. Don't hesitate to reach out if you've got any lingering questions or just kind of want to talk through and get some advice on maybe where you can start or what the next step is if you've maybe already kind of taken the initial step. And with that, I will wish everybody a great rest of their day. And we're also close to the weekend, so enjoy Friday and the weekend. And with that, we will say goodbye to everyone.